This is Leadership in Action, and I'm Casey Cheshire. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of Boston area innovators. Sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. This is Leadership in Action. There we go. We are live. We're recording. We're simmering because we're about to be on fire here, people. This one's going to be good. I'm excited. This guest is a great guy, business leader, entrepreneur, business leader, and that kind of hustle, hard work, grind to grow mentality. He's always inspirational whenever I get a chance to hang out with him. A friend as well, owner of JC Fence, Matt Chiaradonna. Welcome to the show, sir.
How are you doing, Casey? Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Definitely an honor.
Man. It's great to have you on here. I mean, this is leadership in action. We're gonna crush some myths here. So let me just pass the baton to you and say, what is a common misconception about leadership or being an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. So the one myth that I really want to bust today, bust wide open, is I feel one of the most important things that sometimes entrepreneurs and business leaders don't get right, and that is that they need to be on top of every single situation and every single task that their company has at hand. And I really want to smash that open today.
So you don't need to be on top of everything.
No, you don't. It's unfortunately something that most business owners think when they get into their business. Usually they're probably the best at what they do, which is what gave them the confidence to get into it on their own. And for a bunch of different reasons, they just feel like they need to be on top of everything from beginning to end. And to grow a business, I think that that's just a total myth. You don't need to do that.
It sounds like the epitome of micromanaging, right? Being on
Absolutely.
top of every detail. Where does this come from? Why do we feel that compulsion to want to just have our fingers in everything?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, I was one of those people who practiced that, so I can speak from personal experience.
Nice.
And it just seemed always that, I felt like the guy who cared the most. I was the guy who had the heart of the company in hand the most. I was the one that understood what we needed to do. So why wait for somebody else to do it wrong? That old adage, as they say, if you want something done right, do it yourself. To a point that may be true, but in a business, you can't grow a business in a very wide range if you feel like you have to touch everything. So I think that's it. A lot of entrepreneurs are control freaks, and they want that control, and they find it very difficult to let go of that control.
Yeah, that you brought up that age old adage: if you want something done right, do it yourself. Which works on an individual small scale basis, but actually it seems like that may be holding you back when it comes time to growing something.
Absolutely. If you can do just so many things, eventually you've reached capacity, and your business can only grow to that capacity that you can take it. And you may be, as that entrepreneur, really good, and maybe your capacity is greater than the average person. And certainly, again, if you went into business on your own, you probably feel pretty confident that that is you. But it's still one of those things where if you're going to run a business, you should take it seriously, and you should really, know what you want in that business. And if your plan is to grow, you have to start earlier, often, giving up those controls, giving up those reins, and finding people that you can lean on and delegate to in order to, get that out of your hands so you can grow to a larger size.
It's a really good point about knowing what you want and letting that help drive decisions you're going to make. Because if you don't know what you want, then you're just going to be flailing all over the place. But let's say you decide you want to grow. Um, sometimes people don't even want to necessarily grow, but you want to have a better work life condition, because when you were describing that, if you don't let go of things, then the company just maxes out to your own personal capacity. And no one's Superman here, right? You're not the Flash. So you only have so much time so that your company's going to be that big. And that's the only size it can ever get to, because you're holding it back to your own capacity. So if you have that desire to want to grow, things have to change.
Absolutely. And, it's a really home type of statement for me, being in the trades industry, and listening to a lot of your podcasts. Maybe I bring a little bit of a different view than most people. Just being in the trade, it's very difficult. And it's, again, a myth. Part of this myth is that you'll never find people that you can teach and trust and delegate to. In the trades, it's a little bit more difficult to find that really refined, really home run core value type person. So you think, well, I'll just have to keep doing this forever. But, it's really important, I think, even more important in this type of a trades world to smash that because, again, you don't want to beat your body up. You don't want to be the guy in the trenches every single day. And, eventually you're not going to be able to see your family because you're looking at jobs at night and you're in the field during the day. You're out on weekends trying to put out fires. Definitely not a great mentality to take if you want to have a happy, long lasting personal life as well as a flourishing business life.
Yeah, and stay married, past a year or two.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned the trades. Let's talk more about this because it sounds like it adds an extra interesting element to the need to let go. Is it the added physical aspect of it? You're not just in an office, you're out in
Yeah.
the field touching things. What is it?
Yep, I believe so. All trades, for the most part, they do have uh, I guess an action-based service. You are sometimes selling a product, and the product is part of your income and sales, and perhaps you flourish your business on just selling the parts. But most of the time, there's actually a service that's being provided, and that's performing the plumbing, uh, putting in the electrical, installation of the fence. Maybe it's mowing the lawn, whatever it is that that trade offers. It has to be done by somebody, and if you're going to hire people to do it for you, those people have to be managed, etc. And in my trade particularly, we notice that someone will come in and work for a fence company, and they'll get really good at putting up fence to the point where they have that confidence, where they feel that they're an expert and they can branch out on their own. And usually, I'd say 90% of the time, forget who it was. I think it was Napoleon Hill that said like 80% of all new businesses fail within the first 5 years. Usually it's because that person is an expert at that task, that service, but they aren't an expert at what we're talking about, that myth of getting people to work for you and believing in what you do so that you don't have to do it. And they burn themselves out. They're burning at all ends. They're trying to be the guy that loads the crew in the morning, then goes out and puts the fence up, then has to find that new work, price it, order it, get it delivered on time. And that really is a lot of work for one individual to do. So you're going to eventually fail. You're eventually going to not be able to do it the way that you'd like. And, in the trades, that's where I see it, unfortunately, hitting the most.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned earlier, selecting for culture and the attitude of someone who's going to go out there, work hard, trustworthy, all those things, which any company can relate to, wanting to find that. And then also, do they have the mental skills to, you know, figure out the problems and execute the job? Almost any job can relate to that, but there's that added extra physical aspect. Do they physically have the coordination or the
Yep.
strength or the endurance to be out in the fields? Or we talked about today, it's kind of rainy and cold, do they have the ability to even it's almost like an additional selection criteria. So I can see how it's that much harder to find people to then replace you. And it's that much harder to find people that can be as close as possible to that. I know if I did, it'd be perfect, but maybe somebody else can get it really close. But man, when business leaders don't see it coming close at all, then it really kind of makes you want to not replace yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a scary thought to think that if you were the best salesman for your company, that you could replace yourself with somebody else who maybe doesn't know that industry or care in your mind as much as you do. But if you're the only person that sells jobs, you're maxed out at the amount of jobs that you can sell in a day. And so that's where that hard line, gets crossed.
Yeah. And then if you want to spend time with your family, your kids, or something on the weekend like a regular human, well, guess you're not selling anything
That's
because
right.
you're the
Yeah,
only
the only
sole
one.
person doing that. Yeah, I can relate
Yep.
to that.
Yep.
Sure, you got to get people doing these things, for you, with you, so that you're not the bottleneck at any one of the places of your company.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So how do we do that? How do we do that?
Yeah,
Do you have any recommendations? You mentioned you were there. You were kind of in that micromanage world, and then
absolutely.
somehow you're able to start delegating things out. Any recommendations? Any places we can focus?
Yeah, so I'd say, to start off with, the first thing that's the most important really is just knowing yourself. And like you said, that's probably any business. You want to know, what is it that I want to get from this business? Did I just go into business so that I didn't have somebody telling me what to do? Well, if that's the case, then maybe you're a guy that doesn't mind, going that extra mile and doing all that work. But like we said, that's not a great way of life. But did I take this new business on so that I could make more money, so that I could free up time? And if you do that, what is the core plan, the goals,
Right.
the goals, the values? What do I want for my company? So once you do that and you've set that in stone, it makes it a little bit easier to build the team. So the first is to know your end result, know the finish line, and maybe that changes as time goes on, but at least have a pretty good idea. And once you know that, you have to build a team. So the second thing is building that team around you. And at first, that's the hardest part. It's finding those people like you, depending on what the field is, that are both physically capable in my neck of the worlds, but also mentally capable as well. And knowing that they want what you want. When you explain to them your desires, that they light up in their eyes and they see it too. You pick that team, and slowly but surely you find different people who maybe they're not like you, that they're really good at all the tasks that are at hand, but maybe they can be good at one of those tasks. And slowly but surely you add a person. I'll speak outside of the answer for a minute, but that was certainly the
Yep.
hardest part. I would hire somebody, maybe 5 or 6 people in a season when I first started doing this, and in a year I might keep one. The other 4 or 5 just didn't work out, whether it was physically or mentally, etc. But I kept one. And then next year you try 5 again, and maybe you keep one. And it takes time. It's not the easiest, but that's really the most important thing, is being patient, finding those core people and building that team. The third thing I think that is important is once you've established that team and you feel like you can,
Well, actually, before we get to 3,
yeah,
let me
go
just
ahead,
interrupt
go
you real
ahead.
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Man, number 2, um, you said this you kind of snuck this point in there, but man, it really resonated for me. The idea of maybe the people that you're putting on this team aren't like you. And I think at the beginning, we tend to naturally recognize people like us, but we weren't necessarily great
That's right.
working either.
Yep.
And so, yes, we sort of clone ourselves a little bit, but man, someone who could be, way better at planning or way better at managing every little tiny detail, they may seem completely different than us. And I know for me, it was one of those things where I had to say, okay, this person seems weird. Well, they're weird to you because they actually manage these details. So why don't let that, make you afraid of getting them on the team. They actually might be amazing. Like, you need them. You need people that aren't just like you. I mean,
Yep.
just like your attitude, sure, but not just your strengths, other
Exactly.
people with different strengths. That was a
Yeah.
huge point.
Yeah. So for example, it's funny, I own a fence company. So you would think that I, owning a fence company, would be pretty good at putting up fence. Well, that's also a myth. I'm actually not that good at putting up fence. Like you say, you want to hire people who are really good at fence. So I'm more about numbers and more about systems, and that's what gets my gears going. So when I talk to people who aren't that way, like you say, maybe it seems different, but the people who are really good at putting up fence, usually they're very hands-on and they're very patient and they're very creative. Well, that's a little bit different than me. Those are the types of people I needed to hire to complement what I was bad at. So absolutely,
But
100%
yeah,
to your
but
point.
they talk different. They
Yeah.
sound different.
Oh yeah.
Their
Yeah.
jokes are different,
Yeah, they
right?
have different hobbies after work than I have
Different
too,
hobbies.
but that's okay. They
Yeah.
really fill a need for a specific role, and a salesperson's probably much more outgoing than me, less shy. I'm always a quiet introvert type guy. Those guys are a little bit more boisterous, more confident usually than me. But again, you got to pick the right people to complement what you're not good at, so that you're well-rounded, to hit those core values that you want to get.
Yeah, and just what a great reminder that when you're actually trying to build out criteria of what you're looking for in the team, actually write out what you need them to be able to do. It's not about, do they make the same jokes that make you laugh, right? If
Yep,
they do, it's bonus. That's
sure.
nice.
Yeah,
But more importantly, do they have what it takes to, like, put that fence in, or to count all those screws, or keep track of this, or make sure they're on time, or whatever the critical aspect is? Can they do that? And then all the other stuff is kind of bonus.
absolutely. Yep, I agree.
Amazing. Okay, so that was 2. What was 3?
Yeah. So basically now it's just again following into your flow. You have to meet regularly and you have to keep the communication flowing. If you're not meeting, if everybody's not consistently reminding each other as separate groups, sales, operations, finance, etc., if they're not reminding each other of what the goals are, if they're not actively checking to make sure that each department is meeting those criteria, well, now you've got, one guy going in one direction, one guy going in another. So once you've gotten to the point where now you're maybe managing these groups of guys that are managing your departments, if you're not actively meeting, if you're not keeping everybody on the same page, Well, what's the point of doing it? Because everybody's going to be off on their own. Like we said, they're all going to be different people. They're all going to have different ideas. If they're not all agreeing, or at least consensusly agreeing on what the flow is, it will blow up in your face. So that would be the third, is to continuously meet to make sure that the communication stays open with the plan and,
Yeah.
again, meeting the values.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Communicate. Do you is everyone in the same meeting in terms of do you have like
Yeah.
all 80 people in one
Great
meeting
question.
or
No, no.
small
So
meetings or
we would usually only meet with a full company quarterly. We would meet once a quarter to just go over basically the full flow of the company. And that's going to be every aspect of the team, from the helper to the installation team to sales to finance to, manufacturing. Everybody's going to sit in that, and it's going to basically go over all the departments. And usually we try to meet with the departments weekly. A manager of the department will meet with weekly. Sometimes it's a team, sometimes it's an individual. We aren't the largest company. We max out around 30 to 35 employees in the summertime. So, you might have a department meeting that's one person and, an integrator, and otherwise it's basically a department. We usually try to do that once a week. Um,
got it.
yeah, so that's about as often as we meet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, one, know yourself. Where's the finish line? Two, build out the team. Make sure they're capable. Three, meet regularly. Communication is flowing. What's next?
So the last one's the hardest one. That's to
Oh,
let go of the reins, and that's to delegate. Again, going back to it, why do people feel like they need to do it? They feel like they're the best. It's so hard to let go. Once you've got these people and they know what they need to do, and those metrics are in place that we're going to measure, you got to let go. You got to delegate. It's good to still know everything that's going on in your company, or maybe hire somebody that's going to do that for you. But you yourself have to let go. You're not always going to have all the right answers. You're not the smartest one in the room. Hopefully, if you've picked your team the right way, let go. Give up the reins and delegate that work. Train the people who you've delegated to train others to delegate, so that they can continue that same process. The more people that can delegate down, the higher and bigger you can grow. So that's the last one. Let go.
let go. I mean, and to your point, easier said than done, but that's the critical step. And I love how you said you have the people in place. They know what they need to do. Let them freaking do it.
Let them
You
do it.
know.
Yeah.
Now it's let them. But those other parts were important. You got them. They're good people, and they know what they need to do. Things are clear. So just now it's not just like I'm letting go and it's like wild chaos. It's like, no, it's pretty ordered at that point.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
Man, one of the things I found just a long time ago, I remember thinking to myself like, wow, I don't know if I don't trust people as much as I think I do, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'm super trusting to like random people in the grocery store, until they prove otherwise. But
Yeah.
then, when it came to my own team, it would be like, oh, well, they're probably gonna mess that up, and
Yeah.
and that was years ago, but it took me time to realize, wait, why am I holding them to some superhuman, yeah, they might
Yeah.
mess up. They probably will, but
Yep.
then they'll learn from it and ideally they don't do it again,
Yep.
and maybe
That's
your
it.
process wasn't clear and that's actually your fault that they messed
Sure.
up.
Absolutely. I mean, another, I sound like an old soul, but another old adage my grandfather used to say it all the time is, if you give a guy a fish, you feed him for a day, but if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. By holding them back and by thinking that, I used to do it all the time. I'd think a thought, I'm going to give a guy an order. And then halfway through it, I would think to myself, he's probably going to do it wrong. And then I would just verbally say, hey, never mind. Don't worry about it. Let's go do it together. And I would go over there and I would do it. And what did they gain from that? Nothing. If they did it wrong, I probably wouldn't have liked it. But, it was a medial task. I should have let them get it wrong a few times to teach them how to do it on their own. And then they could have done it for me forever. Instead, I would just think quickly, oh, well, how can I get it done the fastest? Forget it. I'll just go do it myself. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely have tried to incorporate that in my mindset. It's okay if they make mistakes. That's the only way they're going to learn. So, you know, that's the way we'll
It
go.
I love that example, and I think that works not only physically, but mentally as well, and it comes to there's a question or there's something like I just heard something in a meeting or we listened to some other people's podcasts and rather than just say, "Oh, okay, this is what I heard. This is what's wrong. This needs to change." I've started now where I'll ask, "Hey, what did you guys hear?" You know,
Yeah.
what did you hear? And maybe they guess the thing I'm thinking. Maybe they
The-
oftentimes now they do. And
Yep.
what's really cool, to your point, and maybe this is helpful for people in this transition, is that it's actually really cool when you've done this, because then not only are they doing it and you're not having to do it, but they're really good at it. Sometimes they're even better than you at it.
Yep,
And then you can have these conversations where they already know what you're going to say, and they
absolutely.
already addressed it. And you're like,
Yep.
oh, okay, never
Nice.
mind.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll
Then they
shut up.
yell back at you. I already did that. Don't worry about it. That's my job.
Yeah.
Oh, good, good. Okay, just checking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I tell people, CC me on that email or whatnot, but
Yeah.
at some until I get bored with you and bored, there's nothing I can't say anything, man. This is great. This email is perfect. Take
Yep.
me off the thread. I don't need to see it.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So those are the four, huh? Any I mean, how do you let go? You just trial and error? You just
Yeah, I think what it was for me was I really had uh a goal in my mind. I had an idea in my mind of what I wanted to do with the company. And I knew that I wasn't ever going to just be satisfied with you know, in my mind I measure things by trucks, right? Obviously every industry is going to measure things differently, but a three truck company that goes out and is at three homes a day that might sell some, over the counter stuff to make a good living. They're not going to be very wealthy or rich, and not that wealthy or rich is what drives me, but they were just going to be at a certain size. And I knew that I could probably just do that myself forever and I would be okay. But that just wasn't what I personally wanted. I always had ambition for, watching Marcus Lemonis on TV and thinking, oh, I could franchise this thing one day. I haven't seen a whole lot of fence franchises before. So I
hmm,
had that deep drive in my head that I should learn more. I should learn more about the business. I should try to make my process clear. I should try to delegate. Well, then I can do six trucks because if I have a guy that can manage three and I can, then it got to, well, there's two guys and they can each manage three. So, and as you do it, you feel I guess more confident. It gets addicting almost. I guess as entrepreneurs, we probably are all kind of that way. Maybe not all of us, but I've got that addictive personality that once I've done it and it's stuck and it's worked right, now my ambition grows and I would like to go more. So I think it's just feeling like you have that plan in mind and knowing what you want. And then once you've got it, it knocks you in the head. It's like, I can't keep doing it this way anymore. If what I want is six crews and not three, well, I have to let go. And it forces your hand. You don't have a
yeah,
choice. You grow yourself too big to what you can handle. And by default, whether you're planned for it or not, someone else is going to have to step up. And that's when those steps come into play. All right, now let's create a plan so that it's not, as you said, just chaos. It's not just a bunch of people trying to do too much. Then you hit your ceiling. And even if you want to grow, you're losing money, because you're not organized for it. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And it's not like we're saying you just go cold turkey and you just take your hands off of everything, you know? And
nope,
I think I love how you just it's like little baby steps, like delegate here, or trust someone here, for let go of the rein here. And then to your point, it's addicting. You're like, well, that worked out well.
yeah,
I don't think about that anymore. That's great. My brain
exactly.
has more room now.
Yep,
Let's do that some more. And then to your
yeah.
point, if you want to then add more trucks, add more capacity, you need to.
Yep, absolutely. And it's something that you just said that it hits it. It's when you're an entrepreneur, oftentimes when you start out, you're wearing the hat of all of those pieces. And so basically what happens is that when you find somebody who you really trust, you don't know who it's going to be. I might set out 15 years ago to say, I just want a salesman. And no matter how hard I tried to find a salesman, I wasn't finding that piece. But then I found a guy who was excellent at managing operations. And it wasn't even by design. It was just that he fit the values and he was going to be able to take the operations off my back. It allowed me to slide out of operations and more into sales. Well, now I could really perfect sales. And then we found a sales guy. It wasn't that I always got the plan in which direction I would relinquish the control, but as you have that plan in mind, the people come to you, they stick, and then you just put out the fires that are left until all the fires are gone. And then, you've got the people in place. Then you create more fires and try to grow another level.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like the fires ever stop. That's
Nope.
the whole point.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just get bigger, but you get more capable of doing it. So
Exactly.
yeah, it makes total sense. Well, I wanted to shift a little bit, and we're constantly learning in EO, and I know you are constantly thinking about different things. Do you have like a most recommended book or podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say I'll stick to a book, and my favorite book that I have read is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. But I would also say that anything written by Napoleon Hill, he's definitely my favorite author as far as everything goes. Yeah.
What's Outwitting about?
So Outwitting the Devil, if you know Napoleon Hill, His job basically was he did a bunch of stuff. He was printing magazines, newspapers, etc. But his passion, his goal was that he was going to interview a bunch of people who failed, a lot of them, and as many people as he could that did not, that succeeded. And basically, he created a science around how these people succeeded. He realized that almost all of them had so many common personalities, so many common traits, and he wrote all of his books about it. Outwitting the Devil was like an offshoot of the business end of it, and it was more of like a personal end of it. And what he got into was basically cycles, and he basically called everything like the cyclone of life. And the more bad habits that you take on, and he gets very deep, and way back in the 1900s he was so ahead of his time. He talks about smoking, he talks about healthy eating habits, and he goes so deep into like the human psyche, basically explaining that if I create these plans and these patterns and I put out good energy into the world and I constantly believe and I continuously remind myself. I write it down and I stick it on the wall and I read it to myself every day. Eventually, those good things will happen for me as long as I stick to my plans. But on the opposite end, the devil's pulling you back in. And he's not talking about the devil like the devil that you would commonly think. He's calling these poor habits, he's calling these
Mm.
bad ways the devil. And he's saying that the deeper into that black hole, into that, spout that you suck, the harder it is to get back out. So that was my favorite just because it helped me with like my personality. We all go through highs and lows. We've all had hard times in life, and it's super easy when the bad times are there for you to let that weigh you down and want you to give up. But a book like that, it really helped me to concentrate on what was important, take that deep breath every day and remind myself of what I'm thankful for and what I'm really looking to do. And it helps those small things not weigh you down as much when you concentrate so much on what you can accomplish. And again, it's like, you know, really important with all those other things too. If every time somebody lets you down that you're trying to put onto your leadership team, you let it sink you into a deeper depression, what's the chances that you're going to be able to build that team and trust people and get out? So that really resonated with me. That was a good book. But he also has other books, like 16 Rules of Success, I think it's called. He's got a bunch of them, and he's excellent. Really, really good author.
Yeah, I've definitely read a couple of those. You're right though. He was such ahead of his time. I mean,
Yeah.
man, back then it's like trying to avoid cholera and everyone's wearing suits everywhere
Yep.
and just trying to make sure you have enough food on the table. He's able
Yeah.
to really
He's talking
push.
about energies. He's
Yeah,
explaining that your mind is a receiving station for, thoughts. I mean, he really gets into some deep stuff that, some people might even say it's like, oh, it's too spiritual. I don't want to go there. But I mean, for a guy in the 1900s to say what you eat and your stomach being so important, and he goes into so much about like the body and the way to treat it so that your body can help you to be positive, and again, like he goes into that. He explains in one of his books that like on V-Day, Victory Day, that you knew that the war was over because the energy was being put out by so many people all over the world of happy thoughts that maybe you didn't even hear the radio or hear the bells going off in your town, but you just knew something really, really good happened because so many people were broadcasting such powerful vibrations. Again, that stuff really resonates to me. I believe in that. How many
wow.
times have you been thinking about somebody or, it's really like a deep thought of yours, and then like the next day that person calls you, or you're really wondering about a client. Hi, I looked at that job that really, I wonder what happened with that guy, and you've got this deep thought about him, and then 30 minutes later, who calls? That's the guy.
Yeah.
So it's just funny how that stuff works. And again, like I said, I really I found that powerful.
You know, when you bring up VE Day, the idea of something like World War II. Sort of we've had these sort of wars that since then, but nothing is so total and like all encompassing, and you're not
Sure.
using rubber
Yep.
and you don't want to use sugar because the soldiers need it. And like this whole all encompassing thing, can't even imagine, but I kind of get chills thinking
I
about,
have them right now as you're
you
saying
know,
it. Yeah.
everyone knowing that it's over and everyone having that sort of letting out that air, just sort of that, and
Yep.
this collective sigh from everyone, but also the collective energy. Um, you see the pictures in New York City where everyone's celebrating,
Yeah.
but I guess I kind of feel a little bit of that on New Year's Eve. I
Sure. Absolutely.
kind of feel a
Yeah.
little bit like there are enough people that are kind of feeling it. I mean, the
Yep.
crazies downtown,
Yeah.
celebrating with where the ball's dropping. It's a little too cold crowded for me for that. But yeah, collectively the world is kind of like, what's coming next, but I can only imagine the VE day, just you
Yeah, it's
feel that
euphoric.
buzz,
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, like I say, so that's the type of stuff that reading all the books. There's so many things out there. Reading right now, Traction.
Yeah.
Traction's a lot about this type of stuff and setting up meetings and so on. But so many good books out there. But he just seemed like he encompassed so much. He could take you into the business aspect of how Carnegie and Rockefeller ran their day-to-day operations and what made them so good. But then he could also explain to you your body and mind's aspect in that. And really cool stuff.
What did he know about food? You mentioned the food.
Yeah, so basically what he goes into is he explains that your gut is as important as your brain is, and that people that overeat and overindulge and they're constantly, bloating their stomach and messing with their digestive tract and, not to be vulgar, but like regular bowel movements, all that stuff. He's not a scientist, and no one's even really at that point known a whole lot about that, but he's explaining your ulcers and your how if you have a bad stomach, you can't clearly think at a business meeting. And he's like, the guy that drinks all night and overindulges and eats that next morning, how productive is he? And
Yeah.
he's saying it business oriented, but now 115 years later, we know that those are the types of things that kill people at a young age and cause cancer and things like that. So I found that to be impressive. And like smoking, everybody smoked back then. There wasn't a person that didn't smoke, and he's explaining that habit as a negative impact that can't be good for you. You're spending money on it, you're distracted by it. It's the devil, right? It isn't the devil, but that habit is a poor habit. So he did a really good job of dissecting those bad habits and saying gambling. He talks about gambling. Again, it's one of his major chapters across a lot of his work is just drive, sex drive. He explains the sex drive as being super important. And if you can harness it and put it correct and be a good person, but use that drive in other channels. I mean, again, like think about all these things he's getting into with your body and your mind and your psyche, and he's explaining how powerful that can make you in business. Wow, to be that way 120 years ago is just, it was amazing.
That is amazing. And
Yep.
such a good point, just harnessing. It's either you're going to harness that and be aware of that, all those different energies and pulls and pushes, or you're just going to ride the roller coaster of them and
Yeah.
not be aware and wonder
Yeah.
why you're feeling blue today.
Yeah. And as we talk and, we talk about that, it's like the same thing that we just talked about with all that. If you just go in willy nilly with no plan for your guys and your people and there's energies everywhere. Every person's got that energy coming in every day. They might be in a good mood. They might be in a bad mood. They might know what they're doing. They might not know what they're doing. All that blends together. If you can recognize those things and you can plan for them, have a goal in mind of how you're going to do it, you're going to have good success. Well, and the same token with your personal stuff, and who says that that's easy either? We all have our weaknesses. And even though I read the book, every couple of years to remind myself, I still find myself thinking, oh man, here we go again. I'm going the wrong path. But it's good to read about it, to be reminded of it, try to get yourself back in order.
That's so huge, right? I mean, it is those other things. Sometimes it's not even about business. It's about all the
Yeah,
other stuff around that sets you up for
sure.
one meeting. To your point, well, not even being hungover, but if you were unhealthy in some way beforehand, the chances are higher that meeting may not go so well. You may not
Uh,
be on your game.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but back in the day, I've definitely done a job interview after having a party the night before. And I was an idiot. And they definitely didn't hire me because they would ask me a question. And then I'm like, yeah, I know the answer to that. I've said it before. I'm like, where is that in there though? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
answer, please come out. And it wouldn't. Like you can't, you got to set yourself up for success that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Hey, great reminder of that book. I mean, just a great reminder to think about stuff like that. And I mean, sometimes we get focused on business when, just like we were the ones holding on to not delegating, we might be the ones with whatever goofy thing we've got as a leader that we're holding back our team with some of these other routines, right? That whatever devil has us looped in, maybe holding your entire company back.
Yep, absolutely. 100% correct. We've all been there where we've had those bad days that we've gone in and haven't been that positive, shining light in the morning. And you can see that holding your team back because when you're not as engaged and you're not as happy, that rubs off on them. Hey, and as business owners, we've all seen the employees that come in that way that they might not be on their A game, or maybe they are hungover. They're just really upset with their spouse or whatever. It really does. That can put a quick burden on a whole crew. We're never going to eliminate it all the way, but it's good to be conscious about it and, actively trying to be helping everybody to be as positive and, goal
Yeah.
oriented as they can.
Everyone's got that journey, right? Everyone's got that
Yes, we
journey.
do.
Everyone's got the dreams, but they may have had that fight with the family member, the spouse, the friend, the brother, the whoever, the stranger on the street. So they may be just loaded with those emotions when they come in.
Yep.
You don't know.
Nope.
You don't know if they've had the worst day of their life or someone just died or best day of their life. You have no idea,
Exactly.
but I think it helps recognizing that it's all possible with
Yep.
people you're interacting with. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Crazy, man. Well, we know each other, but I'd love to just ask you this question because I'd love to know more about you. Who are you, Matt? Take me back in time.
Yeah.
Little Matt, did you always know you're going to be, you know, the owner and the boss of this growing fencing company and this trade? Did you always know you were bound for entrepreneurship, or what was it like growing up?
Yeah, so I mean, it was an awesome childhood. I was born in Revere, Massachusetts, but I only lived there for a short period of time. When I was around two, my parents purchased a home in Peabody, Mass. That's where I grew up. I spent all of my childhood and some of my, young adulthood in Peabody, Massachusetts. I went to St. John's in Peabody for grade school, so I've always been in Catholic schools. Went to Bishop Fenwick for my high school. Younger years were great growing up. I had two younger sisters. My grandparents were both sides, involved in my life. So kind of had that like perfect, first quite a few years of life. Everything was awesome. My grandfather on my dad's side had started JC Fence Company. He was the first generation. And my dad, with some ins and outs, for the most part, he worked for or worked with my grandfather until the time that he took over the company. My other grandfather, who's a huge influence on me, was a machine shop guy. He was in the Navy before that. So growing up, it was always kind of just like expected that I would go to college and pick a career and that I wouldn't be in the fence industry, right? A lot of people have that stigma to the trades, and my grandfather and father being in the trenches, doing a lot of those 50, 60-hour days, not having a very clear goal probably of what it was they wanted. They just knew that they needed to support their families. They didn't want that life for me because they didn't want me to be digging holes until I was 40, or they didn't want me working 60 hours a week. So pretty much I was expected that I was going to go to college. I always wanted to be a lawyer. So no, I didn't
Right.
know I was going to be an entrepreneur. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. That being said, when I was younger, I saw that entrepreneurship. So I was the guy with my buddies that were, probably hear this from every entrepreneur, shoveling driveways for like $20 in the wintertime when it snowed and we had an off day. Me and my
Yeah.
sisters made lemonade stands and threw them in front of the house, and like nobody came, but three people would come and buy like a jug of lemonade and give you $5. So I always had that like I can do it myself kind of mentality. So then crazy stuff, right? We all have crazy
Yeah.
stories. Accident happens in my family when I'm in high school and my dad's out of the picture. He's not going to be able to run the company anymore. And at that point, I wouldn't say that I was forced into, but I made a conscious decision that I like to be an entrepreneur, and I did have high expectations of what I thought my dad was going to do with the company and what I thought I could do with the company. So I made that decision. I made the decision to go into business. That was when I went to work for my grandfather for a few years until I could get enough money to purchase the company. Kind of brings me into modern day today. Right now, we own JC Fence. JC Fence is located in Middleton, Massachusetts. That's my one major company. And as the years went on, one of their goals was always to stop paying rent, to own land, have our own warehouse. So I opened a second company. It's a 301 real estate trust company. I purchased some land throughout my career. I knocked down old home there, redid the land, and I built my own building and office space there. So that's sort of taking you from what got me from being little to where I'm at today. And now that's what we're doing.
Wow. Wow. So not only the fence, but also the real estate and putting up buildings and
Yeah, that was one of my craziest times of my life. In 2007, I purchased a company. So, we all know the way that the world works. Times were pretty good in the late 90s, dot-com booms. The business was pretty good. I was able to save a bunch of money working for my grandfather and living at home from, 18 to like 2021. When the time came, 2007, that he was ready to retire, I bought the business and I bought a home that was commercially zoned in Middleton, Massachusetts, right on Route 114. 2008, we all know what happens next. Economy crashes. Now I've got a brand new company, and I just spent all of my money that I had
Mm.
saved on getting those stuff. And hard times ensue. I end up not putting the business on that land because I needed the money to stay afloat, right? So between 2008 and 2017, we went down into the dumps. 2011, we really start to regrow. At that point, I noticed that the neighbor to my home is going to sell his land, his building, and I can combine those two places. I'd obviously since grown out from 2007 size. That place I had originally purchased was no longer good for me. So yeah, we ended up deciding to purchase the land next door, go in front of the town, get them combined, knock down the old structures and build back up again. So it
Wow.
was 2017 until really about, spring of last year that I had to take that on. And man, I'll tell you what, it was crazy. It was one of those things where it's like, you know, wish I could go back in time and yell at myself. I thought I could GC it. I thought I could learn as I went. I'm a fence guy, not a builder. I didn't know anything about codes and permits and all the rules and regulations. And yeah, I got my butt whooped on it, but it's done.
Yeah.
The building is
So
up and
yeah.
we've
So
learned our lessons.
would you do any kind of building? Are you
I
in-
wasn't jaded. I wasn't jaded.
jaded from?
Yeah, I got my hits. I learned my lessons. I feel like I came out on the other side having by no means an expertise in the matter, but I know enough now that I could get by with a little bit of help. I'd hire that general contractor this time instead of thinking I was going to save money because you're not, hire the expert for what they do. If you want a fence, don't hire the plumber, hire the fence guy. If you want a building built, don't hire the fence guy, hire the building builder. So yeah, I'll
Yeah.
definitely do it again. I hope to, replicate another building in another location at some point in the future, but definitely won't be doing it all by myself again. Learn
Yeah.
that lesson.
Yeah. And what about real estate itself? Is that kind of fun for you?
It is. Yeah, I do. I enjoy that. Again, here we go again, but I grew up always hearing the stories. Hey, if I still owned that first house that I had that I paid $10,000 for in 1970, it's worth 800,000 today. Imagine that. Well, what got,
Yeah.
your past relatives to sell that house? Well, they wanted to sell it. They wanted the equity. They wanted to get better. But imagine if you kept every home that your grandfather had, and instead of him selling out, he paid the mortgage off, rented it out, and bought another one. You can just imagine, that's how a lot of the successful people built that generational wealth. So it is something that I do have interest in, not so much in like a retail or homeowner type of like I want to buy a bunch of homes and rent those out or Airbnb them, but I do have the interest in more of the commercial side where I'm in a unique situation where my business can rent from myself. So
Yeah.
um, I own the two businesses and one of them pays rent to the other. So if I ever could get my company to the point where we could relocate and run a second fence company in a second location, what better situation than to have the real estate company build my own building and then have my fence company, which already has the revenue, rent it. Obviously you could rent it to other commercial places, but that's sort of where my interest lies in the real estate side of things.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense,
Yep.
especially if you can be your own building and pay your own
Yeah,
rent.
you don't
You
have
know?
tenants anymore, right? What's everybody complain about when they rent? Oh, geez, the tenants didn't pay or they
Yeah.
messed up the property or, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Well, if you're your own,
Yeah.
tenant, that sure makes life a little bit easier.
And if you punch your wall and put a hole through it, at least it's your own wall.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, that's crazy. Well, I have a hypothetical question for you.
Sure.
I may or may not have a time machine up in New Hampshire, right? Come over, come visit, get some beers, we get some lobster, whatever. And we go use the time machine in the backyard. And it's a particular kind of time machine because it takes you back in time to like young you. I mean, you're still young anyways, but like we're talking
I have white
um
hairs just like everybody else.
yeah, right. This is before the fence company. This is maybe like start of your 20s or something like that. You're just, you know, uh, starting to think maybe there's a little something here, and you get to go meet that version of you, that Matt. You
Yep.
can talk to him. You can say whatever you want to. It won't mess up the space time continuum. You'll be good. What do you tell yourself?
I would tell myself that I need to lessen my pride and take more advice, take more help. So I always thought, hey, I'll take the lumps, I'll learn it the hard way, but I'll do it myself. I don't need anybody's help. And I've always been a shy introvert that didn't like to network and go out and meet people. And for the beginning of my business career, from when I was 14 until probably 24, 25, I wanted no help from anybody, not my grandfather, not the guy who already ran a $20 million fence company. I was going to do it. I was determined to do it my way. Obviously, as I matured and I have been talked into joining groups like EO with yourself, being mentored by other people in business, being put onto by books. I always like to read and I like to learn, but I like to do it on my terms. Well, I would go back and tell myself, stop being so stubborn, stop being so prideful, take the help from the people around you. And it isn't help, like EO, no one tells you what to do, but man, it sure is eye-opening. It's been enlightening to be able to surround myself with people who have been in situations that they can relate to me and just, tell me what they did. And it takes the bumps, the bruises, the nicks. I probably hindered myself from massive amounts of growth over that decade because of my reluctancy to learn from others. I would go back and tell myself to get to EO now. Why am I waiting? Get into a mentorship program now. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get somebody to help you out because you can grow 100 times faster with those support systems around you than you can just trying to be stubborn and do it yourself.
Totally. And would stubborn Matt listen to you? How
Stubborn Matt would have told me to get lost and he would have still done the same thing. So it's
get
easier
lost, old
said than
man?
done.
Like we call it
Yeah.
old man.
Yeah.
Start wrestling with yourself.
Yes.
Listen
Not
up,
just in my
youngster.
mind. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, man, if I could get that through to myself, I would have definitely been much better off for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned EO too. What a cool environment where people are so humble. And I think a lot of times you have that CEO saying, "Oh, I'm perfect," or like we're saying, like sometimes we feel that, "Oh, we got this, we got this." But in EO, the prevailing atmosphere is like, "Yeah, I've definitely made a lot of mistakes,
Yep.
and definitely not perfect." And it's almost like everyone is just much more humble
Yeah.
because you all realize you're just on a journey and you're all learning and sharing experiences and once you start picking up on that attitude, you're like, "Oh man, I actually would listen to these people."
Yes,
Then but
exactly.
then the flip is no one in EO tells you what to do, like you said, right?
Right.
So right about now you're ready to listen to people and no one's gonna tell you what to do.
Exactly, exactly. But you almost, you enjoy that and you relish in it because it does give you that bit of pride still that they can take you there, they can bring up ideas and unique options for you, but they're not going to hold your hand and do it for you. You still have to be the one that takes that initiative to, yeah. But from what I've been in there, it's just so amazing how personable everybody is. Again, just like all the stuff we've been talking about today, we don't just go in there and talk business. People really break down and get real. And I think that's awesome as well because it helps you, like you said, I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only one that's going through all these things. And if he can do it and he can do it and he can do it and they can do it at such a high level, well, it's possible. It can be done.
Yeah.
So it really gives you a home and, it gives you that peace of mind at night where you're not going to go crazy. And
Yeah, so
confidence. You
oh,
guys give confidence to everybody. It's like everybody sits in a room. Maybe you were on the wall about doing something and everybody in the room doesn't say what the regular people at home would tell you. Hey, don't do that. That's crazy. You're going to risk a lot of money. Oh yeah, that's good. You can definitely do that. Man, it's refreshing to hear that. It's refreshing to hear that confidence in people. So I love it. Absolutely.
yeah. I've even gotten some flack from some people. I'm worried about, "Oh, should I do this? Does everyone do this?" And they're like, yeah, you haven't?" Like, "No.
No,
This
yeah.
is cool. This is
Yeah.
oh yeah, everyone does it." "Oh, okay. All right.
Nice. Yeah.
Sweet." Or the opposite where you're like, "Oh man, I'm dealing with this. This is rough," And you got people going, "Yeah, it's rough." Guess what? There's no secret
No.
solution either. You
Yep.
just got to deal with it. But yeah, it's rough. And it
Yeah.
was just enough to hear that, they can't solve it. You got to go do what you got to do. But at least, five other people are like, "Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, you'll get through this.
You're not alone.
You're not alone." Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally, man. Well, hey, where can people reach out, contact you, and also learn more about JC Fence in case they need to, get some fences put in,
Yeah.
taken out, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So I'm really easy to reach at my email, which is my name, Matt at jcfencenorthshore.com. Super willing to answer questions and help anybody with anything that they need, fence or otherwise related. Also, thanks to you, I'm a new member of LinkedIn, and my name on there is Matt Chiaradonna. Also, we're all over social media. That's our real big footprint. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Our handle is at JCFence North Shore. So that's where you can go to see our work. Or if you want to talk to me, email or LinkedIn now, since I'm a new member.
Yay, right on.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, we put all of that in the show notes. You can just click into your app and look at that and click right through, connect. And hey, Matt, you need connections, man. Welcome to
I know.
LinkedIn.
I gotta get
You
some new
need
friends.
connections. So
Yeah.
everyone listening to this, just, pull up Matt, fellow EO members, even if you're not an EO, pull up Matt, shoot him a connection request, tell him you heard him on the podcast, and you appreciated the interview. Cool, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on here. What'd you think?
Thank you. Oh, it was awesome. Great time, as it always is talking with you anyways. But awesome show. I love what you're doing. And like I said, I've listened to a ton of the podcasts. So keep up the good work. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. And now you've been on it. So
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
totally different experience.
Absolutely.
You survived. It was great. No, a lot of good stuff. And so for those people listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you do or did, because I literally have a page front and back of notes over here, things that we've been chatting about today. But if you learn about those 4 things, knowing yourself, building the team, meet regularly, letting go of the reins, man. We're all here to do that. Or the book, The Outwitting the Devil. I'm going to check that one out. All the different things we've talked about. If you learn something, share this episode with one other person. That's the ask here. And that's how you're a thought leader. Literally be a thought leader right now, just hitting share on your app and sharing this podcast with someone else and help them grow from this whole conversation as well. And with that, Matt, thanks again, man.
Thank you, Casey. Have a great day.
Absolutely. And for those listening, this has been a really cool, fun, exciting, hip, hardworking episode of Leadership in Action. We will see you all next time. Leadership in Action is sponsored by the Boston chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. As the world's only peer-to-peer network exclusively for entrepreneurs, EO helps transform the lives of those who transform the world.